What's up everyone? In an effort to increase my keyboard warrior street credibility, I have been training hard online, and battling in the virtual world. To help me in my quest, the game makers at Rumble have hooked me up with this game, Alliance, Heroes of the Spire. Alliance is a classic for a reason. It combines the best features of the top RPGs you've ever played. With 10,000 different hero combinations, your skills are really put to the test. You have to really work for your wins. Real-time PvP. Crazy giant bosses. Never-ending hero combinations and massive guild battles finally on mobile. So what else do you need? Go to the description below and click on the link. Download the game and get your 50,000 gold and 50 gems for free. With so many divisions stalled with absent or injured champions, the 155 weight class is a breath of fresh air. Lucky for us, in the span of 2 back-to-back events, 2 more names have been thrown into the hat to face Khabib in a title fight. Namely Dustin Poirier and Kevin Lee. How would they match up with the champ though? The narrative being spun now is that given how badly Kevin Lee beat down Barboza, and even got a stoppage, his grappling and wrestling skills are equal to, if not better, than Khabib's. Listen, if we are going to go down that route of rationalization through common opponents, then what about this guy? Khabib beat Raging Al by dominant decision recently. And Raging Al beat Kevin Lee by a unanimous decision. Therefore, if my MMA math is right, Khabib should beat Kevin Lee pretty easily. Admittedly, I am not an expert at MMA math, but I believe I have studied enough about it on the internet to be qualified to solve equations. On a more serious note, looking at Kevin's recent fight, one might be tempted to catapult him to the top of the contenders list. I have already covered many of his positives in a prior video, so please indulge me as I proceed to list some questions I still have. First, can Kevin keep up with Khabib in the clinch? Kevin Lee very clearly showed that he can land terrifying ground and pound. Once in a full mount, Kevin's ability to keep you there, and to tie limbs up to strike, is a sight to behold. That being said, Kevin Lee's main strategy to get you down are blast doubles in the open, or to level change for a double against the cage. He goes for opportunistic body locks when he can, but he doesn't have Khabib's refined clinching strategy along the cage. This is mainly because Kevin doesn't come up for the body lock or underhook. Thus he doesn't have access to trips and the multi-directional takedowns like Khabib. Also, Kevin has been taken down and pinned to the fence in past fights. This is something that doesn't happen to Khabib typically, and he has yet to be pinned against the cage. Even against Gleison Tibau, arguably his toughest fight to date, Khabib was constantly pinning his opponent against the cage, even if he didn't get any takedowns. Secondly, I'm very hesitant to use the Barboza fight as a gauge for Kevin Lee's grappling. Just as I was hesitant to use him as a litmus test for Khabib's wrestling. While Kevin was able to overcome Barboza on the ground constantly, Barboza's guard was limited to hugging and closed guard, hoping to stall Kevin Lee out. Or trying to muscle out of positions to try stand up and run away. Both of these limited defenses resulted in him conceding even worse positions like mount. Good MMA guarding is about learning how to switch between sweep and trap metas at the right time. I don't have time to explain in detail here. But to give you an example, here Barboza is doing the right thing, trapping the striker who wants to punch. Now that Kevin is stalled, he starts to stand, lifting his base. Persisting in playing the trap meta here is a losing proposition. If Lee swings now, the possibility of catching him in a triangle or armbar is very low. Instead, it's time to get under his raised base and try to sweep. Barboza doesn't have the awareness or skill set to make these switches, and instead is a sitting duck for Kevin to rain down strikes. Kevin Lee has faced some good guarders before, who make the right choices and actually commit to playing guard actively, rather than trying to defend statically or run away. Khabib is a very active guarder and he knows to fight off his back to either get the submission or sweep up. Kevin Lee has always struck off his knees, and while he appears to have started to stand more, because he wasn't facing someone who knew how to push his BJJ, it's hard to say if he could replicate such dominance against Khabib. Finally, if there is a wrestling stalemate, can Kevin deal with Khabib's improved striking? Kevin doesn't fare well against someone fighting behind their jab, a tactic Khabib displayed in his last fight. Against Raging Al, Kevin was constantly losing the jab battle, and kept getting turned while eating shots. While these failed to cause serious damage, this was scoring in the judge's eyes. Towards the end when he had no answer, Kevin resorted to telegraphed shots which were easily stuffed by Raging Al. In the Barboza fight, Some of the best moments for Barboza weren't when he was kicking, but jabbing Kevin and making him constantly turn, taking away his ability to set his feet to shoot. If Khabib keeps pestering Kevin with the jab, Kevin might be pressured into unforced errors and concede a takedown or reversal. Moving on, the latest contender that has emerged is Dustin Poirier. After the pummeling of Justin Gaethje, like Kevin, he too has a good case for a title shot. I won't get into the details of the fight that happened last weekend, do check that out for yourself. One thing I would like to point out though, is an older fight between Dustin and Bobby Green. During that encounter, Bobby Green kept trying to use a Philly shell and a lean to protect himself when Dustin came in. Unfortunately for Green, Dustin saw through this and doubled up his hooks to knock him down. Later on, Dustin timed this leaning back to get his second knockdown and the subsequent finish. As some have observed in Khabib's last fight against Raging Al, Khabib was similarly relying on leaning back as a defense. If this happens again should they meet, Dustin is just the right kind of striker to capitalize. That being said, given Dustin's tendency to get into brawls to try win exchanges, and also his tendency to get backed into the fence, I'm not very optimistic of his chances, especially if he concedes an early takedown to Khabib from being too aggressive. Also, Dustin's wrestling has not been on display much in past fights, so it is not easy to see what type of defenses he can throw up when under pressure. Nonetheless, do let me know how you think a fight between Dustin and Khabib would turn out. Alrighty, there is one last person that seems to have been swept under the rug in all this excitement. Till Dustin and Kevin inserted themselves into the conversation, Eddie Alvarez was being touted as a potential matchup for Khabib. To be honest, I thought he presented the most interesting matchup of the three, especially after the revelations about Khabib in his last fight. My detailed thoughts on that matchup are the subject of a future video, so stay tuned. In the meantime, do let me know who you think Khabib fights next. Till next time.
Never stop chasing after your dream. This world is filled with endless possibilities. You just gotta make them happen.